Good morning, everyone, for joining today IoT Coast to Coast last webinar of 2020. This is Deepak, and I have been joined by my friend Nick. It's very cold in Saskatchewan on 12th of December. I'm not asking Nick the temperature in Toronto, right, Nick? I feel always jealous. So thanks for joining, and we are excited for today webinar, and we are looking forward for your contribution in 2021 as well. Just FYI, this webinar is being recorded, so you could find all the recording at IoT Coast to Coast channel, YouTube channel, website, and LinkedIn. We will like to thanks CSAP Corner and IoT Coast to Coast. IoT Coast to Coast is the sponsor of this event. Nick is Senior Data Architect, author, and CSAP Corner MVP, and I'm Microsoft Azure MVP trainer speaker. Nick is very well-renowned speaker in Ontario IT fraternity. I would like to thank you all for your valuable time for joining today. So this is something about Nick and me. We formed IoT Coast to Coast in 2019, and we are almost 1 year old now. More than 1 year old, almost 2 years after 2 months. And Nick, you could find our details over the screen. You could take the screenshot and you could contact us. We have presence in Toronto and in Saskatoon, so we are covering East Coast as West Coast, and that's reflect IoT Coast to Coast as well. So you could find about ourselves at our website and on Microsoft MVP site as well. So let me talk about IoT Coast to Coast. What is IoT Coast to Coast? And
however, collecting actionable data from these sensors to make an informed decision has long been a major problem for most companies.
Deepak, there's no sound, so
because connecting sensors.
Okay, so
maybe we can skip the film.
Yeah, so let me skip the film. So what we are going to discuss today, we are discussing Azure Data Explorer, which is a service by Microsoft, Azure Data Studio, and Kusto Explorer. I will focus more about spinning up the environment, and then Nick will do KQL queries, and he will show some demos. He will talk about data type. So that will be our agenda. We break in two forms where I will be spinning up the environment and Nick is giving demo about KQL. So what is Azure Data Explorer? Azure Data Explorer is the Microsoft services offered by Microsoft Services for data analytical services. You could query any kind of data, any amount of data, terabyte, petabyte, or maybe streaming from IoT device, maybe streaming from flights. For example, airline are streaming huge amount of data. So by Azure Data Explorer, you can connect to almost any kind of data, whether it is structured, unstructured, file data, big data, and you able to get all the output for you. So that's the beauty of Azure Data Explorer. And to create Azure Data Explorer, you need to first create cluster, database, and definitely once you have database, you need to create table to have data, ingesting data. You could also make yourself secure or your data secure by providing some access right or share access signature. The next question which come into your mind, hey, how could we create Azure Data Explorer? We are discussing two options here, Azure CLI command line and by Azure portal. So this is Azure CLI, where in this command we are creating Kusto cluster. We are giving cluster name, resource group, location, SQ name. So basically all the prerequisite information. Once we have cluster, we are providing the database name, like database name, where you want resource group. Nothing fancy over here. We are giving that detail. It takes usually 15 minutes to spin up the data. We could also achieve that thing by portal. If you go to portal, you could create Azure Data Explorer cluster. Once you have that Azure Data Explorer, this is our nomenclature where we are using ADX, and this is then you need to create the database. We could do this over the portal as well. And Nick, can you able to see our my portal, my page?
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
everything is okay.
That sounds great. So we are into Azure portal. I type Azure Data Explorer. Under Azure Data Explorer, you find KQL demo ADX, which we have created for demo. However, you could create from scratch as well. You need to give your subscription name, resource group, cluster name, and the geographical location. For us, most of time it's Canada Central or Canada East. However, you could select as per your geography. It is recommended you will select the geography where you are, and then you have to select the workload can be compute optimize or storage optimize or heavy compute. So you could select as per your business requirement. Where you need more compute power, you could say compute optimize. Where you need great storage, you could say storage optimize. However, for demo, I will appreciate if you will go with dev test. Next is the availability zone. You could select the availability zone as per where you want 2 availability zone or 3 availability zone. So another thing is the scaling is so important nowadays. And the good thing about the Azure Data Explorer, you could leverage yourself by auto scale opportunity, where you are not worried about how much you need to scale. When you need to scale, it will automatically taken care of, and you don't need to worry about, okay, my size is full. It will be the elastic storage. Hit the review and create button. Once you create, you will land it to this page. I have already created, so that I will not use 15 minutes, almost 15 minutes to create. Then you need to provide add the database, give the database name, and give the retention period. How many days you want your database? For example, 365 days. How many days cache you want? For example, if there is heavy workload, hot cache in banking or something, you could do 30 days. Or if you are for school or something where it is not a lot of caching required, you could reduce it as well. Once you have database created, hit the create button. You have database here, and then the database ingestion. You could ingest new data, and to ingest new data, you could go here. You could give the database name. For example, this is the demo database provided by Microsoft, KQL Canada Central demo database, and there are a couple of tables. For example, COVID, geospatial storm event, etc. So if I execute COVID query or anything, I could see it took 2.2 seconds to fetch 92,219 record, and we could fetch any kind of data from here. This is the dashboard where you could manage your queries, manage your dashboard as well. So you could add cluster or anything from here. So that is how Azure Data Explorer look like. Once you have Azure Data Explorer ready, basically this option is used by data scientists, data analysts, or the guys who are more into the data profiling feature. So after that, this feature some like more for us. I'm not saying it's very similar, but it look like or have some similarity like Databricks, and you will find the editor like more like SSMS or Visual Studio kind. If we look over Kusto Explorer, it will give you feel you are using SQL Server Management Studio. It has the run button, it has the chart, which is new thing here. and here you could see from where it is connected. You could see the COVID-19 geospatial, all that, default database option, where we have just look over in Azure Data Explorer. You could query, and it is the editor for Kusto Explorer. This is the editor for Azure Data Studio, where you could see, okay, it is connected or disconnected, what is the kernel, where it is connected. As I told, we are connected to default database, which is help.kusto.window.net. And here, if we execute the query, the result can be seen in tabular form or chart form. So being said that, now I would like to switch over to Nick so that he could take us forward. Nick, over to you, my friend.
So thank you very much, guys, for attending. My name is Nick. I'm here to present the KQL queries language to you guys using the minimum amount of options that you need. Basically, my main focus is on the KQL language itself. It's not about how to spin up the clusters, how to do this. And my other goal is, how could you do this like ASAP? How could you get your feet wet using this query language? So first of all, let's understand where this language came from. So Microsoft was dealing with a variety of data, and they got to a point that said, hey, we need a language that can cover anything, anywhere from a data perspective, any type of data. So, technology has grown, new approaches with dealing with data came up with a Jupyter notebook. They had big data, so they came up with this language called Kusto query language. For years they were using it within Microsoft until 2018. They decided to release Azure Data Explorer, and basically they created Azure Data Explorer on top of KQL. Till today, just heads up, I know Azure Data Explorer has a database. Unfortunately, I've heard this a lot. Everyone's saying, oh, then we can move our database there. No, this is not a transactional. At least I put a date there. At least it's not up to today. But heads up, it's a different beast. Basically, it's a beast that will hammer data in large volumes. A good example is, just imagine each flight, each airline, the engines of each flight, the airplane will generate 2 terabytes of data. So they have, I think Rolls-Royce company has 15 years of data. So just imagine you want to dig into this data and all these files that has been generated from all these engines and all these flights. So KQL is a good language to basically dig into these data. So this is a very simple sample. As you can see, we have where clause, that's familiar, count familiar, substring familiar. What are they? What do they do? Let's just move on. We'll come up with some of these examples. Microsoft has provided, as I had mentioned, my goal is to do something so you guys can instantly use the portal, start working without worrying about the data, the cluster, or anything. So Microsoft has provided a cluster, or basically a database, that is called, the cluster is called help, the database is called samples, and within it there's lots of tables. So if you're into monitoring a virtual machine, there's a sample there. If you're into security and audit, there's sample data there, and so on. It's like adventure works, but it's got, I don't know, 6, 7, and these databases these sample databases kind of come and go, and some of them they're updated. They're very good, by the way. The entities, we've talked about the entities. I'm not going to explain them, but I think they're adding some more features to it, like views and things like that, which I didn't put because I didn't study it, but I will in the future. I I don't think we need to go through the entities. It's not what I'm going to be focusing on, but basically, bottom line, you will need a table or you will need data as a blob storage to work with, to use KQL. KQL data type, I'm not going to explain this, but I'm going to point out two most important things. One is time span and one is dynamics. I will not be talking about dynamic today because, again, here we just want to do the basic stuff. We want to make sure everyone can work and be interested in KQL because there is a learning curve and I wanted to start easy. What is dynamic and where it's being used? A good example is IoT. I work with lots of IoT data, so there are semi-structured data. So how do you drill in? How do you dig in? So dynamic is one of the features or one of the data types that you will be dealing with if you're dealing with IoT data. This is a cheat sheet from Microsoft. I'm going to explain just two of them. One is a count, just aggregation, like count by country or count by something here. And it's, as you can see, it's very, very simple. The other two things I want to mention is two famous functions. When I started, these two functions were like, wow, parse path and parse URL. It was doing everything that I was wishing for to have in SQL Server. But SQL Server doesn't need it. So I'm not saying SQL Server has a weakness. No, it doesn't need it. It doesn't have it, doesn't need it. But when you're working with blob storage path and blob storage URL and things like that, these are the functions that, trust me, it was a savior for me. It will help me a lot. So let's start a demo. So this is the Kusto Explorer. So there's, up to this point, we have explained three canvas that you can basically type your code in. One is the portal, which you can Google and find it. The other one is Azure. Let me just click on it, sorry, because I have it open. So the other one is Azure Data Studio. So you can use things like a notebook or a query only. And in Notebook, you can basically, use Kusto and use Sparks and Python and so on, which I will not be explaining, but I will be explaining the Kusto Explorer. So Kusto Explorer is an editor that you can connect to a cluster or a database, and you can write your codes and basically run a simple query, very high level. I'm just gonna go through one manually, but the rest of the codes I have, scripts I have ready. So let's talk about the canvas first. This canvas is like Management Studio, but it does way more. For example, you can create graphs from your data on the fly. You can export into CSV, JSON, Excel, these common things every editor has. You can change your views. It's got some tools like Power BI and so on, some monitoring to measure the amount of stress that you're putting on your clusters, on your query and so on. So it gives you a couple of interesting things, or you can copy, paste, and so on. But I need to connect to a database. So how do I connect to a database? You can just go here and say, I need to connect to a database. You put the URL of the cluster there and click OK. I'm not going to do it. And boom, this will pop up. So this is basically the cluster from Microsoft. Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay. So this is the canvas. So let's start with a very simple example. So I can click on a new tab. This is where I'm connected, so I know which database, because I may have more databases. In this case, I do. I'm not going to click on them because they're doing something and I don't want to refresh them. And in that database, I have tables. And today I found this one, which I had never, I found this one, which I have never used. So I'm just going to try it. So if I go here and I say COVID-19 and press, I need to run it. So how do I run it? I click here. I don't know how much data. Okay, it's 90, 100,000 approximately. So I can run it. So another good thing about this, it is IntelliSense, and I can say, count, take top 5 records only, basically. And I'm going to press here, which is going to give me the top 5 records. And I can put a where clause. For example, I can say, so as you can see, it is IntelliSense. I can say where, I think it was country, country, let's say, starts with, I'm going to say W. I don't remember. Well, let me just put S, maybe S. Oh, there you go. So South Korea, Singapore. So you can see there's lots of countries that start with the letter S. So this is how simple it is. And then, of course, you can, do some things like count and so on. But anyway, I will be going through a variety of scenarios right now. But I just wanted to show you how simple it is and how easy you can basically, it's that simple. So let's go through. I have lots of codes to go through. So let's go through them. I'm not going to type anything. So this is a kind of a big database-ish. I think it takes around, 10 seconds something to run. I'm not going to run it, but I'm sure you guys got the point from this example that I ran first. Okay. So if I want to do a count, I just basically use a pipeline and use count. Now, I'll show you a variety of tricks that I know that you can use in any canvas or any environment, like whether it's the portal or here or Azure Data Studio. So as I had mentioned, you can press run. Another thing is you can select anywhere and anywhere. I'm not selecting this. I am not selecting. I'm just click somewhere. And I press F5. Guess what? It just runs this. It knows what to select. Okay? One of the tricks that you should always consider is the first thing you should have is always a filter. Always filter by date. So as you can see, we just learned the count up there, where clause, whereby this is a field in my table, and I'm saying convert this to a date. It means this field is a date base, and basically, and another where clause that says states, that is Florida. As you can see, all the states are Florida only. Okay. Let's work on between clause. So between goes in the where clause. So between from date to date. Okay. In the between, you have to put 2 dots. It means dot dot. It means this is the range. That's what it means. So that's another good example. So if I press F5, it will run. So I just want to show you. Now I just want to show you a couple of other tricks. So one of the things that I do, you can select only one part of the portion and press F5 or press this arrow key. Depends what tool you have and what hotkeys or keys that they have. So necessary, you don't have to go all the way down to run everything. So I can say, just run this line. I press F5. I just say only Florida. I press F5. And then I press count F5. So that's another way you can do. Sometimes you want to comment things in and out. So, or you want to write a comment. This is a US state. Okay. So you can add comments there. Or sometimes if you're developing, you can comment that line out. It will still work with the count. Okay. You can do that a lot. I do that a lot. So that's another trick that I do a lot here. So let's move on. One of the things I do is, I have to dig into the data, so I have to study it. I have to see what kind of data I have. So I use the take clause. Basically, I take the top 5. Unfortunately, I've seen Microsoft says this is a random function, but I don't know what the definition of random means at Microsoft for this function, of course. Because when I rerun it, it doesn't give me random. So that's something we have to find out why they did this. Another thing that I see here is I've got all these fields. I don't want these fields. I want to cherry pick what I want. So project, it's like saying select statement in SQL. So I can say project, this field, this field, this field. So let me just pick one field that is not here, let's say state, okay? So if I say run this, and I say, you know what, comma, state. Oops. Oh, I have state twice, sorry, my bad. Let's just pick something by random. And latitude. I don't know. This is the end latitude, okay? So the project plays a role of a select statement, and you can cherry pick the fields that you want. So the other thing is you can combine these two. You can flip them up and down. So I can move this line up and this one down, but you have to understand and be careful why you're doing this. So we'll talk about a couple of scenarios down the road. So another good example is sort by. So you can apply sort by, and as I had mentioned before, this is IntelliSense. I'm just going to do it one more time here. Oops, sorry about that. I'm going to say sort. It will say sort by. It will tell you what you're looking for. I don't know, state, and then I say, you know, ascending. I did two sorts. Does it make sense? Of course it doesn't. But the thing is that you could do this. But so you got to watch out what your code is, what your code contains in a sequence of the action that it's taking. So I think I just explained this above there, that I think you can flip this up and down. So one of the things that I always say, you know, let's understand a query that doesn't look very good. So this is a good query that doesn't look good, and the question is why. And the answer is it doesn't have a filter in the beginning. Filter as in date filter. The first line should be a date filter. So consider that. That's number one. Number two, you have sort something and then sort twice. This doesn't make sense. So something is wrong. You have to. And then you're getting some sample data. So if you're getting sample data, why do you need to sort this twice? There is no aggregation. There is no something that you need to focus on, that a sort or a top. A sort is required twice. It doesn't make sense. Another thing is derived column. So how could I add another column next to the data that I have? So a good example is duration. So I want to say end time, this is a time, by the way, date time, minus start time. So this is another thing that you can add within your queries. And we talked about where, top, project. So down here, it's got duration, and I used it here. So you can move it around, of course. So let's just run this. Duration, it will give it to you in down to the second. I think there is a function that you can go less than a second, but I don't remember it. So now let's talk about aggregation. So aggregation, we talked about count, but there's another count here. So I can summarize, because the difference between count and summarize, count only and summarize and count is, count just gives you a count, but summarize, you can count by a variety of states, or by another group, or another entity.
So Nick, I have one question for you.
Yeah.
Can you reflect the output in the chart, maybe bar chart or pie chart?
Let me get to here. I will.
Okay.
My chart samples are down here. Most of them. We're almost in the middle. But okay, I'll do one. Let me just make sure. I will show you. I'll get your point. Okay. So I just want to count. So I just count the entire countries, or the entire data, storm information, basically. And now I want to group them by a state. So again, these are IntelliSense. You can basically. So just to give Deepak his answer, there's 67 records. If you have data here and you don't have a chart, you can just simply go up here and click chart. Boom, you're done. It is that fast. So how did this happen? I'm going to do it one more time. The reason is I forgot to show you something. If you look down here, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 tabs related to the query that you just fired off. And if you click here, just please look here. If I click here, boom, another chart just popped up. Sorry, another tab just popped up. And Now, of course, each chart has its own parameters. I'm not going to explain the parameters, but I'll give you a good example how these could fail in the middle of your queries if you just randomly, say print something. Okay. So just count and decount. Deepak, how long do we have?
We are good with time. Maybe.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I just want to compare count and decount. Decount is distinct count, and count is just a regular count. So let's check this state. Okay, so I'm going to run this state. I'm going to press F5. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4. One of this, or event type, and 2 of this. Just heads up. So if I run the entire data on the same summarize, what do I get? This is by state. So now I'm doing a count, and I'm doing a decount, or a distinct count, on the same fields that I had, okay? On the same fields that I was displaying to you guys, okay? So this is the result. So if I look for this, that's why I commented this out, so you can uncomment it to understand more about the data, which I have down here. This is the same query. I just added one extra level to do an extra. If you can see here, I put the difference between the query on the top versus the bottom, and it will just do a count. So if you remember, we had 4 of these, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 of this, 1 of this, and 1 of this. But the overall number of records were 4. So these are the things that you can do, combining count and distinct count. Okay, let's just move on. And if I'm not mistaken, we can even click. I haven't tried this yet. We can click here. And there you go. This is the information. Yeah.
So
Again,
it means
you have to come up with a query that makes sense. Of course, I just picked this randomly.
yeah. So it means it's similar to SSMS but different based, where we could get the benefit of visualization as well.
Yeah, technology has changed. SSMS has been around, 1998. So I don't think it's a good idea to compare it with SSMS, but it's a good idea to explain this to the audience and say, hey, we're comparing apples with oranges. So if you want to compare this, I would say, hey, it looks like SSMS, but it's way more advanced. Okay?
Yeah. So we could query any kind of database like flat file, Excel file,
Yes.
structure, unstructured, blob storage. Can we also query by blob storage?
Definitely. The entire IoT Hub data sits in a
That's
Avro
right.
format file in blob storage, and just to basically, let me just pick. This is the summarization. Just to show a sample. I think maybe take 5. Let's do take 5. Okay. Imagine this is a blob storage information coming from an IoT. So I don't know. You have start IoT device ID number, an IoT name, and some other property. One of the things you'll find out is something weird like this.
Mm-hmm.
Look how weird this is. This data is very, very strange. So if
Seems
I copy
like
this
JSON.
Here, yeah, some of them do look like this is it. So as you can see, it looks like JSON. Some of them are JSON, some of them are not. That's why in my presentation, I'm not working on this because it's a little way more advanced, and it becomes confusing. This is not a good time to talk about it, and because it took me a long time for me to learn and understand. But you have to understand the nature of IoT data. But anyway, let's just move on. I don't know if I've answered your question.
You did. Yep.
Okay. So
I have one question. Sorry.
Yep.
I have one question. So is there any kind of a limit on the output of any kind of a query, like storage limit? Because we are doing everything in cloud. as per my understanding. So is there any kind of a limit of storage, for the output?
If you're talking about the output in the canvas, yes, of course there's a limitation. Every canvas, for example, I always say, hey, do a count of, I don't know, let's say you have 10,000, we'll get down there, I will show you. Let's say I have 50,000 records in the result, and I want to put this in a pie chart. It will be terrible. Same thing in data. If you click and say, give me 50 billion records, the canvas here will give you a notice and say, hey, I don't have that capacity. Plus, one question I always ask, let's say 20,000 records, something that it can be handled, 100,000. My question is, which human can read 100,000 records in canvas? It doesn't make sense, right? If you want to copy this, or if you're, let's say this, let's assume this is 100,000 record. Let's assume if the developer comes and say, let's say take, let's say instead of 100,000, this is, let's say this is 20,000. Sorry, let's assume this is 1 million record, and I'm only extracting 20,000 or 2,000. From a developer perspective. Oh, sorry, I can't put it up here. My bad. From a developer perspective, I would say, okay, that makes sense. He's working on some data. I would say, okay, he's working on data. Once he's done, he may extract this to a Excel file as a sample. But once he's done, I'm sure he's going to go there and say, hey, this is going to production. At that point, you need to extract this. And I think Deepak was showing some in the portal. There's a canvas. It's like I don't want to use this word, but I have to. It's a front-end design canvas that has some kind of Power BI engine behind it, but it's not mature yet. They just released it, I think, less than 6 months, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to talk about it because I don't know where it's going, but yeah, you can drag and drop. You put your pie chart, like put the results down here in the canvas, okay?
Okay.
But yes, at the limitation, of course, it will pop up. I will go through a couple of scenarios, and it will pop up and give you a notice that, hey, you're going over the limit. Are you okay? I can handle part of it, okay?
So, sorry, Nick, this is Gurjeet. So, by the way, we are saying that we are querying only a table. Can you query the other tables? I know it's not relational, but can you join with other tables? Or?
Yes, there is join as well. But whenever it comes to whenever I hear the word join, and the first thing I say, hey, you're dealing with big data. So a good example is Google. When Google is providing a report, and they're saying we, generated 50 trillion something, weird numbers. Do you guys really think they do left join, right joins? There is no such a thing. They don't even have these type of scenario because they don't need it. And most of all, you're dealing with you're not dealing with transactional data. This is not transactional data. For example, an IoT device just generates data. What kind of relation has it? It has a relation in which environment it is placed in, but that's an aggregation. You group it by. You don't need to relate it as a relation to a. But yes, there are joins, and there are very interesting joins. So there's left join, right join, inner join. You can do that as well. And there's joins that you can go from one one database to another as well. Okay. So let's just move on. So the order by, I think we've seen a couple of them. I'm just going to run this for fun, otherwise nothing specific. So another thing is start. Let's strings that starts with W. So that's another thing that you can use in your where clause. And now this is answering Deepak's question. So if you remember, we were running this. I am not running this. Let me just delete this so you guys won't make a mistake. And this is the result I get. If I click on pie chart, ta-da, there you go. But once as a developer, once all my work is done, and I specifically want this as a pie chart, I can use render pie chart. So if I press F5, look down here, it did it for me. I didn't need to click anywhere, or I didn't need to do anything. Okay. Can I do a bar chart? Let's do a bar chart. F5, boom, bar chart. Okay. My goal is not to teach you what a bar chart is, or my goal is to show you how simple the KQL language is. That my goal, again, is about the language itself, not the features that you see on the screen, okay? And the tricks that I've learned. That's my goal. Here's a good example about the limitation. I don't know who was asking about the limitation. So this, I have a limitation, but my limitation was on charts, not on the amount of data. So if I just run the data portion only, no chart, anything, it works, no problem. So if I put a line chart, I've mentioned that this is not going to work. So if I run it, it gives me an error. Okay, so this is an error. You get such a message that says, hey, it gives you a heads up that you're going over the limit in a visualization perspective from Kusto Explorer, basically. Okay, I have another sample of that as well. So if I select this and press run, I can just say pie chart. There you go, pie chart did work.
Cool.
So you have to watch out what chart you're picking. Each chart has its own parameters that you require.
So Nick, what do you think from my understanding, whatever I look over so far, it's really amazing for our Power Client project where we see the data from various machines, turbines. It's really good, but it's not a solution for historical data where we have the data present in SQL Server or SQL, and we could not migrate that, or we don't need to migrate that. So what do you think, like, it's really good for someone based where for example airline industry, where if I'm not wrong 2 terabyte data produced per minute by one flight? Am I wrong? Or
no, you're right.
Okay.
Each flight, 4 engines of an airplane. This is Rolls-Royce company. Rolls-Royce as in Rolls-Royce airplane engine, not the car. Each flight generates 2 terabyte of data.
Yeah.
Just imagine in the past 15 years, how many flights they have per day. I think they have over 10,000 flights a day or something like that. Well, but this is before 2020, of course. I think they had around 10 or 15, 10,000, 8,000, 10,000 a flight a day times 365 times 15. So just imagine how much data you have. And each flight, the oil pump and pressure and temperature and all that. So that is big data. That is real data. So SQL Server, transactional, it's very peanuts. It's small.
Yeah.
Something interesting. I just want to say something interesting to people. Data. When someone says we're dealing with data, lots of people say, "Oh, the banks." Well, did you know the banks do not have that much data? Their data is peanuts. And when I'm talking about their data, I'm talking about their transactional data. Transactional data are very, very well formed and uniformed. Basically, they're very structured, and they're very small compared to today's, unstructured IoT data and things like that. An IoT device can generate every day a different data, a different field, a different attribute. But in the bank, when you swipe your credit card, it is your name, your credit, it's fixed. You can't change it. No one can change it, right? But anyway, so giving this example with SQL Server may not be correct, but I would ask, like IoT, there's cold path analytics, there's hot path analytics, and warm path analytics. So the question is, which path are you picking? If it's cold path, you're on the right spot. If you're picking hot path analytics in, for example, IoT, maybe it might not be a good idea because you may only keep 2 days data or 10 days data. 10 days data doesn't have hardcore analytics. It doesn't make sense. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Just in continuation of that, we already look over the caching in Azure Data Explorer. Some guys who join late, possibly they missed that. But being said that we will publishing this video, this session is being recorded, so they could find that thing. And yeah, for hot cache, that really address and if you don't need much hot cache, then you have another options as well.
Yeah. So moving on. So so this is I just put some examples that will fail. Okay. So I'm just gonna run this. I hope I can find. Well, oh, there you go. So this is one of the messages that it tells you on the line chart. So it's not an error. It's giving you, hey, and like you're going way over the limit. So this is the chart that generates. Is it a good chart? No. So I'm gonna dig into the code and let's see how I can change this chart with other new functions. So I can bin this or group this by down to a day. So I can, instead of me before, if you can see, I say group by, summarize means group by start date, but I'm saying, hey, the start date, this is a date time. I don't need the time. I just need the date only. So if I run this again, look at the query. Look, this is more wide, it's more understandable, it's more readable. But again, it's not a query. The goal is not about working with the chart. The goal is how I'm filtering in the group by. This is the goal. But I found out for me to explain this, the best way is to visualization. Okay, again, this is our goal. This summarization is the goal. Now I extracted the hour portion of the date. So this is the date time. I just need the hour, and I basically, this is the same as these two, except this is down to a date, this is down to an hour. Okay, so I'm gonna run this again. Oh, look how this is the same data. The data has not changed. Look how interesting the graph looks right now. It changes. Now, again, this will only help me to understand the summarization of what I'm been doing above here. Okay, we're almost to the end, but the bad thing about this is it's not readable still. You need to group this into different state. So now, if you see up here, again, all of these queries, you can compare whatever you're running with a previous query. So basically, I'm trying to teach you guys what to do step by step in optimizing your query or learning a feature or a function within the query. So this is, I'm going to run. Now look at this. Now I have each state on a different color. This is the same data. Let me just remove this color and maybe this color. Oh, there you go. Let me just remove the green one. You see, very nice. Now I can dig into real nice detailed information about my query. Charts will help you to visualize and understand your query, specifically when it comes to summarization. So if someone tells me, Nick, give us 3-4 points that help you a lot, that you were successful. Number one, filtering. The first filter, like where, put a date range here, where date, something where date. I'm not going to do this because we don't have so much data here. So that's the first thing I would say definitely you should have. The other one is summarization with a visualization to understand exactly what you're doing. And the third one, I would say definitely unstructured or semi-structured data like IoT data. So these are the things you guys need to focus on. And my last one, I think this is the last one. So this will, this is an example. I think someone asked about the limitation. So this is an example. Hopefully I got it right. Oh, there you go. It says there's a 7 series and you got 400. Like if you look at the query, this is what it's trying to give you and say, hey, this is not readable. Are you sure I can still display it? So when it gets to a limitation that doesn't make sense, but it could still handle, it will display it. But if it gets to a limitation that it can't display or it doesn't make sense, it will just completely reject the query.
So it's a limitation on the chart, not on the output.
No. It's not a limitation on the chart. It doesn't make sense. Like it's like me saying, show me 50 billion record on a chart. You just like, hey, if it's a management requirement, you have to make it. You can't say no. But it doesn't look good. But there are limitations, of course, in everything, in any technology. But there's limitation. It can do something, or it's a limitation. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, and no one is willing to invest on that. A good example is this chart. I don't think companies will invest to display 50 billion records or something weird on a chart. It doesn't make sense.
So what option we do have to export the results? Something in this scenario, we could export that in Power BI or something like that.
Yeah, I can just say like it will automatically knows what to do, and then you can export to Excel, JSON, CSV, text, whatever you want. That's it.
Gotcha.
So this is good, Nick. This is quickly, by the way. So basically, it's just like queries we write in SQL, but then we have reports where we can publish the reports for management to see behind the scene. We run the queries. Same way in here. What is the presentation tool?
Presentation tool. First of all, this is a query. So you got your query ready. You can use this in. These are the scenarios that I'm going to say. You can use this in Power BI. But I'm not going to talk about Power BI. It's too common. It's too simple. Azure Data Explorer has a canvas that you can use. That's number one. Number two, let's talk about where other places you can use it. Guess what? Azure Data Factory, you can use these kind of scenarios. It's not about visualization.
Right.
It's about where else can I use this, okay? And you know what? This is an analytic result. So when you're talking about analytics, business intelligence, my question is, how many end users do you have? Do you know how many end users you have when you're dealing with real analytics and real hardcore BI? Your end users are only 5 people. Because what is analytics? It's a storytelling. You're telling a story about your data to a manager to make a $10 million decision. That is analytics. I see companies, they have a pie chart. They say, oh, we have Power BI. And I'm like, okay, are you doing analytics on it? Are you digging into the data? They say, no, you just have 5 sheets of reports and that's it. I said, okay, this is not analytics and this is not BI. And they say, oh, we are in Power BI. I'm saying, yeah, you're in Power BI, but you're not doing BI. You're just using it as a report. So if someone comes and tells me, Power BI this and that, I'm like, yes, it does lots of things, but are you using it? Do you get my point? So, yeah, the front end, if I'm a data scientist, I don't need a front end. This is the best place I can work with. Right now, I have so many codes on IoT that I'm digging into the data. I gave you an example. Oh my God, you guys have no idea how many good stuff I have found in this language that saved my life. Like, trust me, saved my life. I'll give you one example. I have IoT devices that have been generated in the system for 2 years, and the company says, Nick, here's 50,000 CSV files, or technically Avro files. We don't know what's in them. Can you tell us what's in them? Guess what? They're all structured like kind of kind of, oh, I think I removed it. Did I remove it? Yeah, it's kind of like this. And they're inner. I'm like, oh my god, I was going crazy until I found out all these features in Kusto query, and it saved my life. Trust me, it saved my life. But yeah, and I didn't need a front end for it.
Cool.
Okay. Any other questions?
Not from me, by the way. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Just
Welcome.
want to check. Just want to check. We don't have any. No. I just want to thank you for everyone for attending, and Deepak, back to you.
Thank you, my friend. We really appreciate everyone who joined today. I know weekend and especially early morning. It's really lot of encouragement. So we we really appreciate that. If you have any question or queries, feel free to reach us. This is our screen. You could take the screenshot and you could reach us for any POC or any training. And being said that, this video will be available. If you miss some portion of that, or you want to refer later on, this video will be available at IoT Coast to Coast YouTube channel, Twitter, LinkedIn, being said at almost everywhere on IoT Coast to Coast site. Thanks everyone, thanks for your time. Over to you, Nick.
I'm okay. Thank you very much. I just want to say maybe early next year we might have a KQL meeting on like a little bit deeper on IoT data. So now we are gonna dig into real hardcore, real IoT scenarios. These are from IoT hub devices that basically they have semi-structured data, and how I analyze them, how I dig into millions of records and I fish out the attributes and I understand it. So maybe we might have one presentation like that.
Yeah, that sounds good. And yeah, our IoT Coast to Coast webinar series will start from next year, first month itself, and that will, I hope, keep us updated. Cool.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thanks. Have a
Okay,
great one, guys.
Thanks,
Take
Deepak.
care.
Thanks.
Bye.